Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. It's me, Christy Maxfield with Purpose First Advisors and Dr. Donna Marino. And if you've been following us, you know that this year we took out time from our schedules to talk really about grief and loss and death in the workplace and the challenge that business owners face when trying to balance empathy and compassion and work expectations, as well as the emotions of those impacted by those deaths and loss and grief. And we thought it was really important to end the series with a conversation about suicide in the workplace. I'll be the first to admit, as I was writing the description for this show, I felt a little intimidated by the topic. And I'm definitely leaning in on Dr. Donna to help us navigate this because it's something I haven't personally experienced. But I've been putting all of the other conversations we've had into motion in real time with a lot of clients. So I know it's not something that is out of the realm of possibility, right? And while we never want to think about those things, it's important that we prepare ourselves for the chance that those things might happen. So Donna, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. For those who don't know me or might be tuning in for the first time, I'm Dr. Donna Marino, and I'm a psychologist and family business consultant. This is a really hard topic, and I think everyone feels somewhat intimidated by it. It's so taboo. Mental health has stigma, suicide, so taboo. Even saying the word is uncomfortable for people. And I've unfortunately had the experience, both personally, professionally, and in family business. And in the last few years, I've had at least 3 companies where they have lost an employee by suicide.
Oh, wow.
And then, it is so heavy.
It really is. I mean, I was shocked actually just by my visceral reaction to writing about it and not wanting to say something that wasn't appropriate, wasn't sensitive, wasn't well informed, but also didn't skirt around the issue and try to hide from it and pretend like it might not happen or doesn't happen. So, and I'm not even actually experiencing it. I was very surprised at my reaction.
It is intense. I think about even just celebrities, right? That you never met, you've seen on TV, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, Keith Ledger, these big names that you sort of feel like through watching movies, but you don't. Robin Williams, I mean, and the way you feel sad and shook up and curious, like, what happened there? And
like curiosity and feeling bad about being curious.
And that desire I think it's a desire to know more, to understand, because it just really shocks people and throws them for a loop. And the idea that this could be, right under your nose and you not know it, I find that the ripple effects of suicide are so far that when someone hears about it, even if they've never met the person, or they've met the person once, or they didn't really know the person, but they went to school with them, people are touched in a way that's beyond, I think, other types of death.
Yes.
Because of the trauma, because of the shock of it. And then when you're in the workplace and it's someone that you've worked with every day, in family businesses, people tend to stay a long time.
They do.
You've had people who work there 20 years. I've even seen like 40 years.
Yep.
And the relationships that develop there, both in the culture of that family atmosphere, as well as the longevity, when this happens, it really it shakes the company, it shakes
Yeah.
the leadership, it shakes the employees. And you said something really, really important that I think everybody feels is, I want to address it without skirting around it, but I'm also afraid. What if I say or do the wrong thing?
Even more so than any death, right? I think in any
Yeah.
death, we're grasping for how do I express my condolences and offer support in a way that's meaningful, but doesn't put the burden on the person who's experiencing the loss, right? And
Yes.
I feel like there's a whole nother layer of that curiosity and the desire to understand, which would require a very frank conversation that folks probably don't want to have. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that kind of all bubbled up for me. I was like, oh gosh, yeah, it's not
Right.
just another death in the workplace.
Yeah. And that's something owners, when that happens, really lean into me for, like, how do I handle this with my employees? How
Yeah.
do I talk about this? Do I talk about it? Because they're really afraid to address it, but it's a big mistake not to talk about it. And it not only encourages the silence around it, the taboo, the stigma, but it just leaves this void, walking on
Yeah.
eggshells. It's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows, but nobody feels comfortable saying anything.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you'll hear, though, when you start the conversation.
Yeah.
Uh,
And before we go into that, I wanted to
yeah.
back up just a little bit because I feel like the owners I have had to have conversations relating specifically to a f an employee experiencing death in their family. It happened very recently for one of my clients.
Mm,
There was this, how much should we get involved in their mental health
mhm,
equation, which I think
mhm.
would probably also come up when addressing suicide with survivors,
Yeah.
employees who have been impacted by it. And I was just
Mhm.
curious, before we dive into the specifics on suicide, how have you counseled owners to wrestle with and feel like they've struck a good balance between wanting to support the mental health of their employee, but also wanting to maintain confidentiality and
Mhm.
boundaries and all of that? Because
Mhm.
that was one of the things we struggled with just with this, the passing of somebody's spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently, I had a company where someone became suicidal while at work,
Oh, wow.
right? And said something to someone. Um, and we talked about how to handle that. Whether, you know, do you call the do you call the police? Do you get an ambulance? Do you and the thing is, it's always error on the side of caution, right? So if you're really not sure what to do, just error on the side of caution. But talking to people, offering that help, um, you know, setting up, making sure you have those emergency contacts, that is a huge thing, and
Okay.
that they're up to date. Making sure that you have a list of providers in the area that you can refer them to, that people are educated about their EAP, and not just in the handbook, right? Have conversations. May is mental health month. Maybe you do an in service every May for people.
Yeah.
Um, HR, keep that, have a handout ready for that information. Um, give give people mental health days,
Yeah.
right? In this case, they worked very closely with the person, gave them some FMLA time. They were working with some doctors and stuff. So keeping in contact, and even getting a letter from the doctor before they return to work to make sure that they're ready. So it kind of depends at sort of what stage you catch it at, but what can you do for prevention in the office first and to make it comfortable to talk about? And then when something happens on site, what's your protocol? Like, develop that ahead of time, teach people what to do. You know, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that if you're worried about someone, they don't show up at work, or say in this case, you send them home, but did they really go home, or who's there? You can always call the police to do a wellness visit. And what they'll do is they'll show up and check in and make sure that that person is okay. They will take them to the hospital if they need to. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't seen that, but they'll go and make sure they're okay.
Right.
You know, there are times they go and there's a deceased person there because they live alone and they didn't show up at work. And it's not necessarily mental health,
Right.
but this is an option that you have that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. And I think even being that bold to sort of insert yourself into what most people would consider someone's private life, hearing you recommend that we err on the side of caution, meaning we err on the side of providing more support and intervention than be regretful that we didn't do more. That not because it's our job, but because we want to have care for our fellow person, and particularly for those people we work and care for. I also thought, really interestingly, I could see owners saying, well, I'm not a social worker. I don't know what the resources are, right? Because we work with small business owners who the person who does HR is the person who processes payroll, who is the person who does all the bookkeeping, right? You know, and so I think encouraging owners, as we have in all of our conversations, to think through scenarios before they encounter them. And then, no, we're not asking you to step in as a mental health professional. We're not asking you to step in as a social worker. We are asking you to make sure you know what resources are available in your community should you or any of your employees need those. So many of our organizations are also charitable. Like, our business owners are charitable. They're integrated into their community.
Yeah.
We support local organizations. And it behooves them to lean into that, whether somebody needs utility assistance or somebody needs mental health assistance. There's lots of resources available.
Yeah. The EAP is a wonderful way to support your people, because even I just learned this beyond, I know the mental health side, but they can offer, you know, legal, financial, like other experts to help them in other stressful areas. And, you know, it doesn't have to be complicated as far as finding those resources. Start with your insurance company, start with your EAP. Give me the list of people in our area that take our insurance, that take our EAP. The EAP offers a certain amount of free sessions, free therapy sessions. And if they also take your insurance, then if you want to continue, then they'll start billing your insurance. So it's kind of a win-win situation where you can try it out at no cost to you if you just need a few sessions. I mean, obviously, if it's someone with severe depression who's suicidal, they're going to need more care. But is it an employee dealing with the aftermath?
Correct.
One of the things, one of the things you said, Christy, that's important is that so many people live with regret and guilt following, even when there was absolutely nothing they could have done.
Which is often the case.
Yes. You know, there are signs you can look for, but if you miss them, it's also not your fault.
It's not your fault. And I think that's also where having the responsibility for knowing what resources are available in your community is not the same as having the responsibility for making sure your employees use those resources. So
100%.
that we're not suggesting that the burden is on the employer to make sure that people are following through on those things, but as a holistic protocol for avoiding and then potentially dealing with grief and mental health issues and perhaps suicidal tendencies in the workplace, it's better to be prepared and to make sure everyone has access to the resources that they can use if they so choose. Yeah.
It's about how can you help, not, not taking on a burden or a responsibility that's beyond, what you do, but just how can you help and create a culture of helping and caring in the office.
Yes. Helping and caring culture. I love that.
Yeah.
And as you said before, not addressing it when it occurs is a huge mistake. And I would imagine it's not just the eggshells and the can I and should I and what if and are we going to talk about it, but in some of my reading, it was also that this could bring up suicidal thoughts for other people. That there is, I hate this word, but the word contagion was used, right? That
It's true.
when it surfaces, if individuals have had latent thoughts about taking their own life, it can make it a heightened situation where they're likely to take action.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it even more so than expressing grief and helping people process information, you're potentially avoiding another tragedy.
Yeah, for sure. Um, it's hard to say, but suicide is contagious, and it's not just teenagers, right?
Mhm.
We often think about that and fear that. People often avoid talking about it because they're afraid of implanting those
Yeah.
thoughts in their head. Oh, they're going to get these ideas, but they've got those ideas already,
Mhm.
or or they may have them coming up. You can't plant it in someone's head who isn't feeling that way.
But the
Um,
event can trigger those feelings more intensely for people who have already
correct.
predisposed to have them. Okay.
Yeah. And statistically speaking, knowing someone who committed suicide puts you at higher risk of committing
Oh,
suicide.
okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but that is that contagion piece. So I lost a close family member to suicide, and that automatically puts me at higher risk no matter what my mental health is. So that's an interesting and kind of scary fact, right? And it
Right.
doesn't mean you will, but it's interesting that it puts you at higher risk. So your employees, by being touched by this, are at higher risk.
Mm. We talked a lot about EAP. Have you worked with employers who have decided to bring mental health professionals on site? I mean, it's
Yes.
one of the most common circumstances where I think we've seen that is school shootings. After a
Yeah.
school shooting,
Yeah.
often the mental health care providers are brought on site to help.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so I was curious if you'd had seen that at employers as well.
Yes, I'll say it's rare, and I would advocate for it being more of a standard option. Just having someone come on site with an open door for a couple days or something, not forcing people to do it, but
Yeah.
offering that, and they can pop in. Uh, the schools are good about it. They have they've created more trauma responses, and they do it with suicide. I have seen companies and worked with companies where, family businesses, again, it's not only does the family work together, but often there's family members working together as employees, right?
Yeah.
Like the company might employ 3 or 4 family members. So say it's one of their family
Yeah.
members, right?
Mhm.
I've seen companies provide services for that family member.
Ah,
Um, I've going on site, dealing with the trauma. Maybe there's a educational piece. Maybe you do address everyone and then have the open door for people to pop in, because people also don't understand necessarily their own reactions and what it's bringing up for them.
Sure.
Also, trauma tends to bring up past unrelated traumas as well. It's a trauma response.
And not linear. So it's not like
Yeah.
on Monday I'm going to feel this way and Tuesday I'm going to feel this way. It's a very nonlinear process.
Mhm. Mhm.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Have you also
Absolutely.
seen where companies needed to address both internal and external communications?
Mhm.
Because of the privacy piece, I think, of course, it's no one's business when someone passes what the cause was.
Mhm.
But as
Mhm.
we noted, this is a particularly sensitive area where people are curious. And
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
there's also an urge to understand so like we can prevent it again.
Yeah.
Um, but that families may want to keep the cause of death private.
Right.
They might
Right.
not want to, have their loved one be the center of that conversation.
Mhm.
Um, so how have employers handled the communication piece?
Yeah. I have found that it, it varies, but they will meet with the family,
Mhm.
talk with the family about what happened, express their condolences. Often they'll attend the funeral service. Uh, I haven't seen much in as far as within the office trying to kind of hide what happens or the cause.
Okay.
I've seen more openness within the office, but also, asking for respect for the family, I think there's been a lot of consideration around that. And then I think as far as talk among employees, there's healthy talk and unhealthy talk, and you gotta shut down the gossip, the rumor, the blaming
The
of
blame.
people. Um, yeah, that you've gotta shut down right away. Supporting each other is different. Talking about their feelings about it is different. Um, Sharing memories is different, you
It is.
know?
So,
And
how does that
yeah.
relate to anniversaries? Like the
Mhm.
date of their passing or the what would have been their work anniversary or it's Father's Day
Mhm.
and your dad was the owner of the business and
Yeah. Yeah.
so is there a way that they could even be thinking further ahead in terms of the ripple effects?
Mhm. Mhm. Where I've seen, um yeah, I've definitely seen anniversary reactions in the workplace, often with the, people closest or
Mhm.
have worked the longest with them, with leadership who's more cognizant maybe of the anniversaries. HR tends to be, impacted by that because of that personal,
Oh, yeah.
effect, and HR has to deal with a lot of the fallout. If this person had
Mhm.
a life insurance policy through work or a 401k, or like having to be involved with the family about beneficiaries and things like that for any programs they had, and so that can really wear on them,
Oh, I
and
can
something
imagine.
we need to think about our HR people.
The
Mm,
folks who are gonna be on the front line of helping the family and helping the employees.
right, right. Exactly. So the owners as well,
Yeah.
and anyone in the business who is related to the person or worked closely with them. It's important to, I think, especially in the beginning, to address it, talk about it out in the open, offer continued help, um, and then think about how you want to handle anniversaries. I don't think you have to make a big public display of an anniversary, but just being mindful of the people that might be touched the most by that, and just checking in.
Checking in.
Sometimes people also, when it's something that, say, was hard for them, just knowing that you remembered is thoughtful and
Yeah.
important to them, and thanks for the consideration.
Yes.
Just like other deaths, being respectful of when someone wants to talk about it and when they don't.
Yes.
How they want to deal with it is individual, and not right or wrong, but giving them both space but opportunity to connect and talk when they need it.
I'd imagine too that in some cases, this employee may have been frontline face to face with some of your clients, or they may work across departments where you're like, I didn't know that
Yes.
Christy knew Jack, right? Or something like that, where
Mhm.
there may be people
Mhm.
who are touched that you're not fully aware are part of that ripple effect.
Right.
And
Right.
I also know that we sometimes judge of like, well, you didn't know him that well. I don't understand why you're so upset. As
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah.
saying, like, the example you used earlier, there are people who pass away in our world who we've never met and have no personal relationship with, but because we have an ability to interface with them because of their job, like actors,
Right. Right.
that we feel connected to and a grief around. So I think there's also just that component of being aware that
Mhm.
it's not just the immediate family, it's not just the immediate coworkers.
Exactly.
There's a lot of other folks who would be processing this.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's all kinds of reasons why people react the way they do, even when they didn't know that person well or didn't work with them so closely. Maybe it's their level of empathy, maybe it's their past experiences, maybe even on the fringes people have guilt. Why didn't I notice? Why didn't
Yeah.
I see that? Or I noticed he was like acting different, but I just figured he was stressed out about this project, and now they're in hindsight going, oh, I should
Yeah.
have. uh, the the aftermath of a suicide is really, it's really devastating, and I mean, kind of unpredictable who's going to be impacted and how. I do want to talk a bit about like how to recognize certain signs,
Yes.
and it is looking for changes in behavior. Like suddenly this person is kind of showing up late, leaving early, their work's getting sloppy, they just seem kind of down. They're not
Mhm.
smiling as much, they're not laughing as much. uh but really looking for those changes and checking in, right? They may just be stressed out because of X, Y, or Z, and they may not be suicidal, but maybe their mom's in the hospital.
Right.
Maybe, just showing that empathy and compassion, and that people notice you, that people see you, care about you. Those things can make a difference.
Yeah. I've seen recently on social media that there's a sweatshirt, t-shirt that a lot of people have been wearing, that the message is like on the back of the shirt that you're important, you matter. Right. And so it's
Mhm.
sort of this um,
Mhm.
environment of support without actually having to say anything to anyone. But to simply
Yeah.
state that if you're struggling, you're not alone. And it seems that even that recognition of, oh wow, somebody sees me, or
Mhm.
somebody recognizes
Mhm.
that what I'm going through is a thing, right?
Yes.
It's not
Yeah.
a phase, it's not a mood, it's a thing. And
Yeah.
feeling like that general affirmation of you're important and we need you here.
Yeah.
So I think even just in that workplace culture of caring, of if you are struggling, we want to help you, because
Mhm.
that's sort of where performance and job expectations kind of intersect with any mental health issue. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there are folks whose performance is poor because they don't care about the job they're doing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are performance issues that are related to a lack of clarity about their job and their responsibilities, or perhaps a lack of training. But underneath all of those things, or perhaps in combination with those things, there can also be the mental health issues related to stress and trauma and perhaps
Mhm.
suicidal thoughts. When you're coaching folks on how to understand what some of the signs might be, and
Mhm.
that intersection between, I really want to help Christy figure out what's going on and get her connected to resources, and the work's not being done, which means we've got unhappy customers or employees who feel overburdened, or the ripple effects of
Yeah.
the poor work performance that
Mhm.
is sometimes the result. How do you balance that
Yeah.
empathy, compassion, and, oh, this is also how we're going to get things done while we help this person get the resources
Right.
and support they need?
Right. It's interesting because I was working with a situation where there was a manager who wasn't performing well and talked about some, mental health issues as well as, personal life stressors. And the company really was there, adapted, but it didn't get better over
Mm,
a good period of time. And they did actually have to let this person go.
yeah.
Right, and those things do happen. I think a good intermediary is FMLA, and a lot of people don't remember they have FMLA. They don't know what it's for. They don't know if they're eligible, and
Mhm.
there are certain eligibility requirements, even the size of the company, whether they
Exactly.
have to offer that or not. But they can choose to. They're legally not required at different sizes, and there are family businesses within that, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's fair to say your work is really deteriorating and I'm concerned about you. I'd like you to take this time off to help yourself and we'll hold your job here.
Yes.
Um, it's fair to give a grace period and allow that grace period to end.
Yes.
I know
Oh,
what you're
that's so
going
important.
through, right? Because we can't extend ourselves forever. And
Yes.
I would also say work with your HR people very closely.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want to make any recommendations that are contrary to what you can do legally or those kinds of things, but work with your HR department. Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we, insist that they have to get some kind of treatment in order to continue working? And like I said, I'm not an HR person. There might be HR
Right.
people freaking out right now that I said that. But, an employer still has to cover their tush
Right.
and run a business. And so it's thinking about how long can this go on? How much grace can we give this person? How much bereavement time can we give them? Bereavement, we don't, there's not a lot of bereavement given to people. So what, as you an employer, um, is
Yeah.
it, is that negotiable? Is that,
Just had these
um,
conversations last week. And the smaller
mhm,
the company, the fewer people to pick up the pieces that the other person isn't able to handle right now. But also this true wrestling with, your spouse has just died. 3 days is not sufficient.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we're starting a new job in 2 weeks, right? And then mentally and emotionally, as an owner, trying to figure out how to be both a good person and a good owner, and a good
mhm,
person and a good service provider to your client, right? And I
right,
think recognizing that those are dynamic situations where you have to kind of be willing to walk through what's working, what's not, but also this idea of a grace period that has a beginning and an end. And that, seeing progress. I wonder too, because I could see this scenario. I don't know if you've encountered it, but I could see HR is not going to let us maybe require that a non-family member get treatment beforehand. But I could see a father, son, mother, daughter, uncles, cousins, people who are biologically related to each other and in this company together, having sort of this, you need to go get your head on straight. And until you do, you're not allowed back to family dinner or to the board, right? Sort of pulling the family card on family members where they may not be, not that that's necessarily permissible either, but I could see it happening because that's what families do, right? The tough love approach.
Yeah.
And
it's, you're kind of flooding me with thoughts here on that, because the other thing is that not every family member reacts the same way. And there are going to be people who shut down. There are going to be people who, have that throw some dirt on it approach, the gamut. And there can be judgment between family members as to how you're handling it. And so that needs to be addressed. Frankly, it's a good place to bring in a mental health person to provide education to the family, to do a few family sessions, to talk about the different needs of different members and what's realistic and what's not. Even, in my own family, when the person we lost, there's denial, there's shutdown, there's, I decided on a big life change during that fresh time period, let's say, which was the right thing for me. But I know another family's reaction was, you never make a major life change within the first year of a loss like that. And it's not that doesn't have legitimacy. It wasn't the right thing for me. And what I did might have seemed rash to people, but suicide makes you evaluate your life.
Yes.
Whether you're a family member or not. And it's a really interesting process of, even though it was a person's choice to commit suicide, and some people don't like that phrase anymore, just as just as information. Some people are offended by that, and sort of the new phrasing is died by suicide.
Yes.
So just to put that out there, and I mean no offense to anyone who doesn't like the terminology. So if a person dies from suicide, even when that is a choice they made, people evaluate, am I living my life in the way I want to live it? Am I happy?
Right.
Am I spending my time in the way I want to spend it? And still a feeling of life is short and you never know. And that was a piece of my life. Am I living my life in the way I want? And there were some no's there that I needed to correct.
Right. And that to me kind of speaks to the suddenness for those left behind. It is an abrupt death.
Yes.
It is like a tragic accident.
Yes.
Very
much so.
I very much relate to what you're saying, and kind of bring it back to you don't have to know the person really well. I had a colleague who died suddenly in a tragic accident on the way to her meeting with her clients, right? And the odds of that accident ever happening again to anyone, let alone me, very small, right? But there's the suddenness of it, and I try to protect against all these things, and I try to make sure that I'm safe and I'm acting safely and I'm not putting another, and This was one of those things where literally a piece of concrete fell from the sky and there is nothing she could have done about it.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
uncertainty of feeling out of control, right?
Yeah.
I think I thought about her passing more in some cases than people I was more emotionally connected to who had a long illness or we knew that their time
Yeah.
was coming to an end, because it just jarred that sense of safety and predictability
Yes.
and control that I
Yes.
thought I had, even if I didn't.
Right.
And then
Right.
brought up all those issues of, if that was my last day, would I have been happy with that being my last day? And what life choices might I rethink and all of that. And
Yeah.
I think that sudden recognizing that for the people who are around, who are left behind, that
Mhm.
it feels like the world has fallen apart, because it really has.
Yeah. Yeah. And with suicide, it's that reminder too that like we never really know what's going on inside of someone. And this family member I've been talking about uh had a big birthday bash like 2 weeks before, and she was so happy. She was like, "Oh my god, she was so happy."
She wasn't.
She wasn't. And maybe she was really happy that day, right? But you just really don't know, and I think that's something as a society we have to think about more. When you meet someone grumpy in the in the airport or like different situations, you
Yeah,
don't know what they're dealing with.
100%. I think it goes back to that culture of caring where we're not
Mhm.
making assumptions and we're giving people the benefit of the doubt and we're giving people grace because we don't actually know what they're wrestling with. And to us, it's a missed deadline, or you've inconvenienced me or delayed something that I thought was on track. But for them, this could be a very inconsequential piece of the day, given whatever they're grappling with.
Right.
Um, and
Right.
that's hard. That's hard when we're all expected to come in and do our thing and get it done and not miss a beat and then take on
Mhm.
more.
Mhm.
Um, that what I'm hearing you say is part of our preparation for dealing with grief and death and loss and suicide in the workplace is to create a culture that accommodates time and space for feelings
Yeah.
and for being human and for needing grace and extending grace,
Mhm.
while still being very clear on what expectations and accountability we're holding each other to.
Right. Right.
It's not
And
easy.
it's not
It's a
easy.
lot of
It's
work.
not easy, and I think especially in family business, it is not easy. People usually know each other on a more intimate level, and the owners still have a business to run, and yet they do care about their people. And it's like, how do you have kindness, empathy, and care while also holding people to expectations?
Yeah.
I think that grace period is so key. Like,
Yes.
and having it kind of clearly defined, at least in your head, at least,
Mhm.
of like, this is the amount of time I can afford to be this flexible.
Yes.
And, something I wanted to mention from before, like those middle paths,
Mhm.
we talked about FMLA, but like maybe it's also, okay, I let you leave early on this day to go to that therapy appointment or
Sure.
that support group. Or can they work part time for a couple weeks? Or can they have some hybrid work? Or, can they work from home or work 4 days a week? I mean, what are the sort of like halfway accommodations
Yep.
between, not being here all the time versus not being here at all?
Yeah, and I think also feeling comfortable that you can say that because we're able to accommodate you in this way for this period of time does not mean we'll be able to, that this is the new normal. that on 3 o'clock on Tuesdays, you get to go home regardless of what's going on, right?
Right.
Because I actually do
Right.
feel that that's one of the things that employers struggle with, is that they make an exception to the rule, so to speak. And what they thought was a finite agreement becomes sort of a new normal for the person who has received the
Right.
accommodation. And so
Right.
again, it requires us to do something that we're not very good at in the workplace and in many other parts of our lives, and which is to have very frank conversations about the situation. It's not an indictment of the individual, like you were bad and you did bad things, but that this is a moment in time. We need to come together and reassess it at a certain point.
Yeah.
We need to be
Yeah.
respectful of each other, and we need to not take advantage of either of us take
Right.
advantage of
Right.
the vulnerabilities that this
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
creates, right? But we're not really good at any of that, right? That avoidance is the path of least resistance.
Right.
100% all the
Right.
time, no matter what. And I think I'm always compelled when we talk to think back, like, okay, so what does this mean to the employer? And
Right.
every conversation we've had about this has really led back to creating a culture where these conversations and the ability to be forthright with each other and caring with each other is commonplace, so that when the extreme occurs, when the death or illness or divorce or whatever other situation presents itself, we're not practicing these things for the first time. And we're not trying to be these things and act in these ways for the first time. And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm hoping that the folks who tune in and look, is that we do have the ability to shape the culture in which we want our employees and our customers and our family members, if we're working with our family members. We do have the ability to shape that culture and the expectations, even if the family doesn't communicate that way, because we take what we learn in our family and we bring it to work, whether we're
Yeah.
working with family or not, right?
Yeah.
So maybe these kind of conversations don't happen in your family, but as a leader of a company, you still have the ability to say, here within these four walls and in this relationship, we are going to talk about these things. We are going to wrestle with the balance between accountability and compassion.
Yeah.
And we are going to
Yeah.
set boundaries, and we are going to make our needs known. And that could be transformative.
Right. You used a word that I loved, and that was reassess.
Reassess.
Right? Let's try this for 3 months, and then let's reassess in 90 days how that's working for each of us. Right?
Right.
And the other thing I thought you were going to say, but I think is a real concern of employers, is well, if I do it for this person, I have to do it for everyone.
Absolutely. That's 100% their concern.
And I think you can set guardrails around that. This is a limited time, case by case, or in the case of traumatic bereavement, this is our plan, right? So it's and it's it's sort of crazy, the things we have to think about these days and tune into, and the world has changed so much, expectations have changed so much. But yes, I think that you can think ahead in these ways. Okay, I want to offer this to this person. How do I do that in a fair way, where it's not everybody now everybody leaves early one day a week to go to therapy, right? I mean,
I think that, again, that open dialogue of, I'm not going to get up in front of the room and tell you how I'm dealing with this particular situation with this particular employee, but I might come in and say, we've never experienced this before. We've decided our process and approach is going to be to work with employees to find accommodations that work for both them and the company, and do 90-day assessments. Like, that's just, we never knew we had to do this before.
Right.
We've never done it before. But P.S., we're thinking that should you encounter a scenario yourself, this is a process you can feel like we're going to work through and do that.
Mhm.
And that, you
Yeah.
know, at least because people make up stories in the absence of information,
Yes, absolutely.
right? And those
Absolutely.
stories are like, well, if it's okay for her, then I, you know, I work as hard as
Why
Christy
does she
does. I
get
don't
this
know why she gets
treatment?
that, and my life's a mess. And you know, I don't know why
I
I would
have
get that
heard that and heard
accommodation.
that recently. You
Yeah,
know, oh, you're favoring this person or favoring that person, and these kindnesses weaponized,
yeah,
and that's not fair.
yeah,
And that is a concern of employers.
absolutely.
And thinking about, if I do this thing, how do I get ahead of that? And
Hmm.
it's sad that you have to think that way, frankly. It is like,
It is.
it's upsetting, but also trying to be prepared for that, and the
Right,
proactive thinking. You're not always going to be able to do it. You know, you're talked about, oh, this is the first time we're dealing with this. Well, look at COVID, right?
right,
All these new policies had to be in place. Who knew we'd have a pandemic?
right.
So you be as proactive as you can, and then you rethink your policies and what needs to be in place when the unexpected
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
Something I want to mention before we're out of time
yeah.
is not just a suicide of an employee in the workplace, but how do you help the employee who outside of work has
Hmm.
experienced this,
Yes.
and that traumatic loss? And some of that is going to be the same as what we talked about with employees, but just the thinking about that. I'll say, you know, my employer was great in that, um, I was out for a week or something like that, you know, not the 2, 3 days. I had to
Right,
fly out of state. I had to help make arrangements. You know, I didn't hear anything about policy or anything. It was just do what you need to do, right?
right.
Um, so things like that as well. It's not always an employee, but it's an employee
Correct.
dealing with a
Yeah.
traumatic loss and traumatic grief. And we've kind of talked about in previous recordings in this series on grief, helping employees who are grieving. But I think it's important to recognize that traumatic grief is different.
Yes.
And like you said, the shock, the suddenness is what's really like you are just blindsided.
Hmm.
And that takes a little more. It really
It does.
does.
Yeah, I would agree. I also think that just knowing that what you said before of do what you need to do, check in with me on Monday, right?
Yep.
Because I feel
Yep.
that's where like our natural instinct is to say, do what you need to do. And then I don't see you for 2 weeks. And I'm like, maybe
Well,
that's
I
what they
didn't
needed to
mean
do.
disappear, right?
Right? Like, but that's what they needed to do, right? You know, so
Right.
I think
Right.
that also that I come back to this set intentional times to check in with each other. Set
Mhm.
intentional
Mhm.
intentional times to say we need to just assess how this is working for both of us. Because I also think there's the employee who says, I'd much rather be at work. It's a distraction and it helps me have some stability and
100%.
continuity. And you may feel uncomfortable with them being there because you're processing your own feelings about the loss they've experienced and don't think that they should be back at work already, right? Like have that
Mhm.
judgment and that blame and all of those things. So I really love this approach of this feels right now. What feels right now is to tell you to go take care of yourself, take care of your family. And in a week, let's have a phone call and a conversation and see what's going on and what we're thinking needs to happen. Because we also
Mhm.
try to do so much scenario planning in a vacuum. Well, what if
Yeah.
Christy wants this? What if Christy wants that? What if this happens? What if she can't make that trip? What if she can't do the presentation? Should we have somebody like we've got to
Right.
talk to them? We got to
Yeah.
talk.
It's like, well, ask.
We'll ask. Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
there are people that are like, I just wanna come in and work and not think about it right now. And there are people, you know, when I lost my dad in a traumatic circumstance, like when I went back to school, which I did right away, I was in graduate school, it was like selective. Like I could do these things, but then there were other things I couldn't. But being able to communicate that um, was important, and having some expectations of like, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do. I see we have a
Yeah.
comment here.
We actually
Yeah.
do. I wanted to just share this, that this differentiation of traumatic grief is an important one, and I think one that I wasn't really familiar with. I think we all intuitively knew, like, this isn't the same as fill in the blank, but that this is a very stressful time of year for people. It is not the
Mhm.
season of joy and light and celebration and endurance and loving compassion for everyone.
Right.
And so to it feels timely to be having this conversation and to heighten our senses a little bit about the care and accommodation some of our colleagues need right now.
Yeah.
So,
And Deborah, I
so thank you,
appreciate
Deborah.
that comment. Yeah, because it's true. And we often have the expectation that everyone's feeling joyful at the holidays. And it's especially, at least for me, especially those first, the first Thanksgiving, the first holiday season, it's the absence is so strong,
Yes.
and you feel like this apprehension leading up to the holidays. And for people who may be suicidal, if they're feeling lonely and isolated, and the holidays sort of exacerbate that for them, because everybody else is with their family and everybody else is, doing this and doing that. And like you said, we create stories in our heads.
Sure.
And, when you're feeling low like that, you think you're the only one. It can be a time of high risk.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you for that. And so if folks are wrestling, employers find themselves needing to talk with someone about how to help their employees with mental health, or perhaps they've experienced grief, death, or loss, or suicide in their workplace and need more assistance, how can they reach you?
Yeah, please reach out. Email me, Donna at drdonnamarino.com. The DR, not the word. And yeah, I mean, I am really happy to support people in this, to offer a complimentary consultation. It's a really serious issue that it's important to pay attention to. And owners are at a complete loss because they're not psychologists, they're not social workers, unless you own a therapy practice, right? It's not that way. And how do you do it? How do you do it tactfully and helpfully?
Yes. And I would say, if I can be of assistance in any way, whether it's connecting you to Donna or to other resources in your community. I've spent the first part of my career in nonprofits. So there's a way in communities where
Mhm.
these networks exist. But also, if you just want to approach the conversation of, I'm not sure my handbook is enough to deal with the complexities of mental health in our workplace right now, and I'm struggling with balancing that compassion and accountability. Those are conversations Donna and I love to have and help you
Yes.
sort through.
And
So
Christy, I think you're a wonderful contact for when these situations happen and they impact business ownership and M&A decisions, succession decisions, and they weren't ready for that. Like,
yeah,
I think you're the perfect person to walk them through that with compassion and kindness. And you just have such a high level of emotional intelligence that even though we don't do the same thing, you bring so much of that to the table in the work that you do.
well, thank you. And it is always my goal to be a resource, and to know that I often say I'm not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a therapist. And so I love to have a network of really strong colleagues like you, Donna, to be able to refer to and to make sure people are getting what they need when they need it. So
Mhm.
for everyone who joined us today, we hope that this was helpful, and that this conversation opens up some dialogue and thinking for you. And if you're finding us because this has now touched your life and you're grappling with it in the moment, we're glad you found it, and we hope that you'll reach out as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.